Hi, I'm Jason McColm Smith, author of Elemental Design Patterns, and I've been asked to give you a couple of tips on reading this text. First of all, I would suggest to readers that you keep in mind that this is a bit of a mind shift that's going on in reading this book. Traditionally, programming has focused on the constructs of programming, particularly education of programming is focused on the constructs of programming. Things like functions, methods, algorithms, data structures, classes, packages, all the bits and pieces, the gears and the cogs that we use to build software. And that's great. And there's a tremendous number of books out there that can help you with that. The elemental design patterns are a way of moving away from thinking solely about the constructs of programming and thinking more of the concepts of programming. In other words, what is it that we are trying to accomplish? How are we accomplishing it? And what's the best way to do so? The design patterns literature is vast. It's huge. It has exploded in the last 15 years since the publication of the original design patterns text. And it's a beautiful abstract field to play in. It can be a little esoteric at times, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. And the thing about design patterns that a lot of people tend to miss is that they're not rote recipes. Someone may look at something like the decorator pattern or the visitor pattern or the singleton pattern and flip, because they're in a hurry and they need to get something done, they'll flip forward to the sample code section and go, oh, that's how I need to do it. And they'll just copy and paste it into their system. And you see this kind of this idea replicated in books that are design patterns for Java, design patterns for C#, design patterns for C++. And all of these are a way of helping a reader implement various of these ideas from the design patterns literature in particular languages. But it also tends to foster this go grab the solution, copy it, paste it, and just follow the constructs. Design patterns are much more than that. Design patterns are ideas. They are abstractions of thought. They are concepts of programming. They have a particular problem, a particular context, and a particular solution. Those are the three portions of any design pattern. The problem that you're working on is almost always going to be universal across languages. The context that you may be working in is your particular domain, a word processor, or maybe you're using Java, or those are the bits and pieces that form the space in which you need it to have a solution. And of course, the solution is the meat of the design pattern. But all three of these have to be taken into consideration when learning and applying design patterns. So you'll have people who will look at design patterns literature as rote recipes, and I think it really loses a lot of the power of design patterns when you do that. So instead of thinking of design patterns as constructs, things to be copied faithfully time and time again, think of them as concepts. Think of them as, this is an idea of the problem I'm trying to solve. These are the various requirements and forces that are shaping the solution that I need. And the design pattern solution is an initial seed on a starting point on how I can solve my problem in my particular context. So making this shift from constructs to concepts is not a simple one. And a lot of practitioners and a lot of students struggle with this every day. And some of them never quite make that jump up to the next level. The elemental design patterns are incredibly small concepts of programming. I mean, you look through the catalog and you see things like recursion. Well, that's pretty simple. That's something that most of us run across fairly early in our programming careers. But the Elemental Design Patterns book provides a dozen pages on recursion within an object-oriented environment, and when it's usable, or when it's best used, when it might not be the solution that you want. Some of the ramifications, some of the side effects. It uses the standard design patterns literature format for providing this information. So by thinking of recursion instead of as, well, I have a method call that just goes back on itself, instead of abstracting that out to I have a piece of functionality in a method that's embedded in an object, and it has to perform its work. The best way to perform its work is to break it down into a bunch of smaller pieces that are identical, that are simply going to walk across a common data space. That's a much richer description of recursion than, well, I have a method that calls itself. And by sort of digging down into what's actually going on in these fundamental programming concepts, you can get a new appreciation for how they relate to one another, first of all, how they can be best applied, and how they are much more flexible and have a much greater range of both depth and breadth than perhaps we ever gave them credit for. You will find new ways to apply old ideas, old familiar tools that you run across, you use every day without even thinking. This book is designed to kind of make you stop, take a step back, and rethink about some of these old familiar tools in ways that you can find absolutely new applications for them, or perhaps realize that the tool you've been using isn't quite the right one for the job, and if you just take a little step to the left, there's a better way of doing things. So try and keep in mind that the book is about concepts, not constructs. It's a way of lifting that level of discourse, that discussion of software engineering, away from the gears and the cogs of the languages that we use, and instead raising it up just that little tiny bit so that we can start talking about the broader problems in a unified and common way.